Hello, and welcome back to the 10th anniversary celebration of the NPMS, the National Plant Monitoring Scheme, sorry, I should say. My name is Jasmine Salvati, I work for JNCC, and I'll be chairing the next session. So the next session is going to be a panel session, but if you have any questions, and we really want to have questions for this session, please do put them in the Q&A box. That would be amazing. So, as said before, this is the Q&A panel session. I will be inviting our panel members to turn their cameras on now, please. Again, if you have any questions, please do put them in the Q&A as soon as you see them, or think of them, not see them, think of them. And we will answer those as quickly as possible. So I will be reading out the questions as they pop up, or as we get to them, and passing them over to our brilliant panelists, who I will quickly introduce. So first we have Dr. Rachel Murphy. Rachel is representing Plantlife, and she's the volunteer manager. Obviously, we've already heard from her today, giving a brilliant talk on DEI, and then also introducing with Karen, the volunteer voices. But I'm also sure many of you know Rachel anyway, just from interacting with her and with Karen, and I'm sure many of you love her as well. We also have Julia, who is the Chief Executive of BSBI. Julia and Rachel are both on our, some of our management partners for the NPMS. And Julia plays a vital role in the running of the NPMS, but also in making sure that the world at large knows about who we are and what we do. So she'll be able to give some brilliant insights into that. We also have Professor David Roy, who's here representing UKCEH. He's the head of the Biological Records Centre, and he's Professor of Ecology at the University of Exeter. So he's also, through being the head of the Biological Records Centre and also through being on the management sort of board of other schemes, very closely engaged and working with JNCC on management schemes. So he will be able to give us brilliant insights into how NPMS data is used to protect our environment. And then last but definitely not least, we have, in part because she's my boss, we have Chris Cheffings, who you have also heard from, giving us a brilliant keynote speech. As we already heard, she was one of the designers of the NPMS, and is a volunteer as well. So we'll have brilliant insight on both sides of that, and through representing JNCC, we'll be able to give us some fantastic insight into how NPMS data is really important for policy for UK conservation. So without any further ado, I'm going to stop talking once I've read out this question. The first question I think we are going to have is there a target number of sites that we want or need to have data for on a UK-wide scale? So I'm initially going to come to Chris for that, I think, as one of the designers of the scheme, and then I'll come to David as the head of the Biological Records Centre.
Okay, well, thanks, Jasmine. I'm slightly scared by that because I don't remember what the target number is. So David's probably going to give a much more statistically based answer. Also, overall, the JNCC schemes vary from, I suppose, high hundreds of sites up to around about 5,000 sites, I think, is our largest scheme. So that's the range. You could always say the more the merrier, because it obviously reduces statistical uncertainty, and it would also mean we would be getting more plots in some of the rarer habitat types. So currently, as you saw in the indicator, we're only reporting on 4 habitat types, and I think it would be wonderful if we could report on more of those. So yeah, I don't have a target. David's going to give us the target, I'm sure, but I would like more, and I definitely want to be in the thousands.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I don't have a number to hand either, but I guess the key point is that in the design of the scheme, it was very carefully considered how to make it representative of the plants and habitats that it was focused on. So we we want to retain that rigor so that we're confident in the trends and indicators we're reporting. And I would say that the NPMS has been very influential in development of how we analyze data from monitoring schemes, particularly when we have gaps. So even though the NPMS has got a very strong statistical design, we know there are gaps for all sorts of reasons, because sites can't be visited or people aren't available. Yeah, as the NPMS has been very influential in the statistical and modelling areas in terms of how we deal with data with gaps to make sure we have robust assessments of the state of nature. And the other thing I was going to say around the number of sites, there is complementary approaches which use the same methods as the NPMS, but can be used in other contexts. So that's perhaps another way to increase the sample size.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chris and David. Julia and Rachel, is there anything that either of you want to add to that?
I think just considering not just target numbers, but where we might want to increase survey coverage of certain particular habitats that perhaps aren't as represented within the scheme, some of those trickier habitats to get to.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So for the next question, this one is a little bit more general, hopefully, but also I think everyone can talk on this. So again, I will come to Julia first, then Rachel, then David and Chris. So going in the opposite direction to how we went last time. How is the data being used to improve plant conservation in the UK?
So we're going to have a talk from Ollie soon about how the data is being used, but it's being used to understand more about the diversity and abundance of plants and their habitats, but it's also being used by partner organisations. And we've got a talk as well this afternoon by Nick Mariner, looking at how their own lands are managed and using the data and the results as a guide to decision making on land management.
Rachel?
Yes, and I think it was Jane that mentioned earlier that actually NPMS data have been used in, I think it's over 300 studies now across the board. So of course we don't actually have, full coverage of exactly where the how it's being used all across the country, but certainly, as Julia said, it can be incredibly useful in terms of considering land management, and as a result, some larger scale landowners are considering using NPMS methodology within their own monitoring programs.
Thank you so much. David, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to have a robust measure of plants and habitats at the national and regional level to have an assessment of whether various conservation initiatives are having the effect of reversing declines and moving towards recovery of habitats, which are key pillars of some of the policy around nature conservation. That the NPMS is very central to those measures.
Perfect. And then Chris, do you have anything to add?
Well, yes, I don't want to steal from Ollie's talk, which I don't know what he's going to say, but it is really central, not just in terms of the indicators that are produced, but then in terms of thinking about the targets. There are already targets in England and there are more targets coming, and thinking about habitat creation and habitat management, and then thinking about what the NPMS tells us about how different habitat qualities will help in terms of plant diversity, and then the knock-ons for pollinators and other animals as well. So yeah, it's really influential.
Oh, thank you so much. We have a couple of questions in the Q&A. So one of them is from Sue of the Brilliant Photography talk earlier, asking if it's possible to meet a survey square person, e.g. if one is visiting an area like Cole, would it be Karen or Rachel facilitating that? This would be on a volunteer photography basis, not as a member of the public. Rachel, do you want to take
Wouldn't
that one?
that be fantastic? We'd absolutely love it. If we do have any volunteers in Northern Ireland who would be really interested in having Sue or, you know, folk along to come along to their square with them, we would absolutely love to hear from them. Yes, it would be myself and Karen that could facilitate that. And actually, Sue, I know Sue's actually going to be attending an NPMS event in Northern Ireland next week as well. And that might be a very, very good place, Sue, to find out if there are any volunteers in the area that would, yeah, be more than happy for you to join them.
Brilliant, thank you so much. We have another question here. So this one probably for David and Chris. Are there plans to link pollinator data to plant monitoring results?
I can start and let Chris carry on. So the UK pollinator monitoring scheme shares some of the same squares with the NPMS. So there's a direct link between those two survey schemes, which will make it a powerful way of looking at the links between pollinators and plants. I think also there's potential to sort of combine at other scales with other pollinator data, for example. So there's very active recording of pollinators through the bees, wasps and ants recording schemes and the butterfly moth schemes, for example. So yeah, as the two schemes get a very good time series, so the NPMS meeting this milestone is really important, I think, to give us a strong basis to start making those assessments.
Fabulous, thank you so much. Chris, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I think the pollinator monitoring scheme is even younger than the NPMS, and so but it was designed, as David said, that some of the squares are common between the two, and so that is kind of baked into the design of how that's going to come together. There are other aspects that already are happening, so it's possible to get a prediction of what pollinators are in a quadrat from the plants that are there, and then you can use that to help understand what pollinators you might be seeing. And it's also possible to do a fit count, which is part of the pollinator monitoring scheme, right now on any NPMS square, and that can help in our understanding of how pollinators are associated with different plant species. So yes, if you want to do more pollinator monitoring, please do a fit count on your NPMS square.
Can confirm fit counts are fun and easy to start, so definitely give that a go. I think one that sort of feeds off of that, but I think one that everyone can have some input to, is what's different about plant population change versus other species population change. For example, birds, which have been monitored for a very long time, or butterflies, which we're also celebrating this year for 50 years of monitoring. So is there any major differences? I'll come to Julia first, and yes, then I'll move through the panelists.
Thanks, Jasmine. Yes, so I think it's the scale and the speed of change is subtler for plants than for other groups and other taxa, because change is taking place in plant populations, but it probably takes longer for the timescales to be revealed in the change. And an example of that would be ash dieback, for example, in woodland plots. The trees may still be there, but maybe dying over time, unfortunately, and that won't necessarily show through and until over a longer time span.
Both interesting and a little depressing. Rachel, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, just really similar thoughts, really, in terms of the speed and scale and it taking a a longer time to see these changes, although it is worth mentioning that I think it was in our 2020 report we started to see or we started to mention that we're starting to see indications of sort of more extreme shorter term weather events. Like, I'm trying to think now, I started in 2019 and I remember that we recorded quite a lot of bare ground and sort of more heat and dry weather resistant species in the 2018 where there was quite a drought. So we do start to see a little bit of an indication of sort of more extreme events, but yes, it's certainly, generally speaking, just slower and subtler over time.
Brilliant, thank you. Chris and David, do either of you have anything to add?
I was just going to add, yeah, I'd agree with that, that the changes can be subtler and slower, but we can see dramatic changes through extreme events or, you know, issues such as invasive species spreading rapidly, for example. So I think it's can have both a long-term and a short-term perspective potentially. I'd also say that plants are the important part of the food chain for other groups that may be responding, particularly insects may be responding more rapidly, but particularly butterflies having the association with food plant condition. It's important to have different elements of the food chain monitored so that we can make these assessments and links between responses from one group from what's happening to another.
Brilliant and very true. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I alluded a little to this in my talk, that just counting individuals for plants is in and of itself a difficult thing to do, and that is why we look at percentage cover in NPMS. If we were to just look at presence absence, plants can hang on, as Julia alluded to, for a very long time before they finally disappear. So we wanted to be able to measure change, albeit slowly, but more rapidly than we would otherwise. And so that is why we're looking at that percentage cover, to understand how plant communities are changing.
Brilliant, thank you. Chris, I'm going to stick with you for a second. So Victoria asks, are there any links or synergies between NPMS and the England Ecosystem Survey?
Yes, there are. I mean, the plant sampling that is done in the England Ecosystem Survey is done differently, but we know from studies that were undertaken actually at UKCEH before the England Ecosystem Survey was designed, that it's very possible to co-analyze NPMS data alongside countryside survey data and also environmental change network site data. So they're subtly different methods, but they're very easily analysed together. And I would just highlight that the England Ecosystem Survey took the method of weighting different habitats to decide where to put their plots, which was completely 100% designed as part of NPMS. So that was a huge success.
Making waves. Okay, so Barry asks, as part of our fern monitoring group, brackets FMG, of the British Pteridological Society, brackets BPS, we are hoping to get a countrywide citizen science project to monitor wall ferns. Is this something you could involve your volunteers with? And I'll also add, is this something that we would like to involve our volunteers with? I'm going to come to Rachel and Julia, and then over to Chris as someone who organises a lot of schemes. So Rachel, do you have any thoughts?
Thank you. That's super exciting, Barry, and great to hear about. And I definitely think it's something that we could let our volunteers know about quite regularly in our volunteer communications that go out via emails and newsletters and whatnot. We do tend to share other things that our volunteers might well be interested in and getting involved in. So certainly if you've got any information about it, it's definitely one we could be more than happy to let our volunteers know about any plans when they are written up. Similarly, there may be some opportunities there to share some learning. And we've mentioned the TPOP quite a lot today, and I would definitely, UK TPOP I should say, I would definitely suggest that the JNCC are worth getting in touch, because that is such a useful group of surveillance schemes who really come together to discuss challenges, best practice, just going about day-to-day running and supporting citizen science schemes. So I would 100% recommend getting in touch with the team as well. And similarly with NPMS, there may well be ways that we can work together in terms of, you know, how to identify ferns. You know, we have quite a few resources already, and equally would be super happy to learn from you guys, because we do have around, I believe, 12 fern species on our indicator list. Top of my head, I might be wrong. So yes, quite a lot of overlap there, and I'm sure there's ways that we can support each other.
Definitely, and good plug for TPOP there.
Thanks.
Love that. About that. Nikki is the TPOP organizer for everyone else. Julia, do you have any thoughts?
Yes, I'm just wondering if I'm wondering if anyone listening is wondering what TPOP is. It's quite an acronym, but it's basically all the monitoring schemes that JNCC supports across the UK. So it's like a partnership of all those different monitoring schemes. And JNCC has a newsletter and coordinates lots of joint working, so we can all learn from each other, from the birds, the butterflies, the bats, all the different schemes working together. So that's what TPOP is, but it stands for Terrestrial Evidence Partnership. I can never remember the acronym works, but that's what TPOP is anyhow. And yes, fantastic, Barry, to hear about your planned survey. As Rachel was saying, we can share with NPMS volunteers through that newsletter, but also all of us as partners in the programme can also share in our newsletters. So at BSBI, we have our membership e-news and our BSBI news to journal to members, but we also have recorder e-news that goes out to our recording network once a month, and we could definitely share about that to our network. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. And Chris, any sort of quick last thoughts on that as someone who organises a lot of different schemes?
Well, I think I would just add one thing about UK TPOP, which is you don't have to be a JNCC supported scheme to participate. And there are other schemes that participate and gain learning and are able to also share experiences through that. So don't be put off that we don't currently work with the British Pteridological Society directly, but do get in touch. So thanks.
Can I ask Chris how people get in touch?
They get in touch with, well, we do have the UK TPOP mailbox, don't we, Jasmine? Shall I look that up? Well, after this panel discussion, I'll look it up.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Okay, so Alireza asks, well, 2 questions, but also never apologise for a lengthy question. We love that. Could we link NPMS to detailed precious data collected through NVC? So I will come to David for that one.
So the NVC was quite influential in designing the NPMS. So some of the work on defining the indicator species for different habitats, and I noticed there was another question about that. That very much used the NVC data to understand how plants were associated with different plant communities as described by the NVC. So I think there's probably not direct linkage, but I think the communities, by monitoring sort of plant communities within quadrats, the sort of data coming through the NPMS is very analogous to the NVC. And there's been some recent work to collate all the NVC data into a single database for the UK alongside plant quadrat data from the NPMS and the countryside survey, for example. So we're better placed to analyse some of these data together to give an historic view of plant communities, but also a current view from the NPMS.
Brilliant, thank you. And Chris, I'm going to come back. Sorry for putting you on the spot so much. I'm going to come back to you for, do we intend to undertake monitoring on environmental changes, soil, climate, etc., through time so that we could associate plant richness or diversity change with underlying factors?
Gosh, there's a lot in that question. And yes would be too simplistic an answer. So changes in soil surveys are immensely difficult, but there is the soil survey that is currently ongoing in England, at least, which is beginning to give us new understandings of soil health. Obviously, climate is monitored anyway, and we do also have things like nitrogen deposition data as a gradient right across the UK, and we do have quite a few growing and important data sets which we do already co-analyze with any species surveys, and the NPMS is still a young survey. 10 years is wonderful, but we're beginning some of those analyses. And I know, oh gosh, how many years ago was it now that we did the climate change analysis with NPMS? So we're beginning those analyses, and more will definitely be coming, because those are exactly the types of analysis that the survey is designed to help with.
Thank you. Sarah, your question is absolutely wonderful, but I'm going to save it for last because I think that that's something that we can leave on, and that will be a wonderful thing for us all to hear about. I'm also going to skip the next one and come back to that just because I've asked Chris 3 questions in a row. Sue asks, okay, I'm going to read all of this out, but the question is a bit at the end. Mary Reynolds, author and reformed landscape gardener from the Republic of Ireland, gave a superb talk last weekend in Belfast. She showed one slide of a parent bird feeding a fledgling and said she couldn't recall exact amount of larvae the chick required daily, but it was around 300. Then she explained that this is why native plants are so important, because it is those where our native insects lay eggs and larvae develop. Any comments from panel on this is great, but I suppose the question, if there is one, is about joining the dots between the various counts, birds, butterflies and plants. So I think we have touched on this a little bit, but David, I just want to come to you quickly and see if you have any comments or thoughts on that. And then Rachel, I'll come to you.
Yeah, no, the interesting question and observation. I think we mentioned the link between the different schemes and plants being important base of some food webs, for example. So really important for understanding these links. I would say the scheme is really designed to give a national and regional status on plant trends and indicators at sort of broad scale. But I think these more detailed questions, I think, can be, probably maybe best tackled by additional sampling or experiments. And they can be very much informed by some of the learnings from the NPMS. So I think there is a link between the national monitoring approaches to give us a state of plants in a robust way, and they can help inform some more detailed experiments to get at these real detailed ecological questions such as that.
Rachel, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, really, the only other thing I'd add is that a plug really for an upcoming talk. Nick Mariner is going to give us a talk a little bit later this afternoon about a programme called Tracking the Impact in the Chilterns, whereby they have survey squares, very similar to our NPMS survey squares. And while they are recording using NPMS survey methodology in those squares, they are also conducting butterfly transects, bird transects, and basically various other citizen science taxon recording. So do take a little look at that, because that's been absolutely fascinating to see all of those different methodologies for the different groups basically all being put to work within the same sort of squares within that landscape. So do stick around for that later.
Brilliant. And yeah, Nick's project, TTI, is fascinating. So secondary plug from me. Okay, I'm going to combine two of the questions. So one from Anonymous and one from Lois. So how is the scheme impacting conservation policy? And from Lois, given that DEFRA and Natural England, etc., are funders and partners, one hopes that they take full note of the data and the changes that it shows. Are there direct contacts with policymakers? And additionally, are there any local MPs who seek information on the data or the work of NPMS? So I'm going to come to Julia first, because as the CEO of BSBI, she has many contacts with this world. And then I'll come to Chris to talk a bit about policy.
Thank you. Yes, so the programme, we have a steering group, and we work directly with all the government agencies in each of the countries to directly make sure that we are meeting, their needs to feed into their policy. And equally, we are doing everything we can to make sure that the data is out there and is shared and is analysed, and we're writing papers and sharing reports all the time to make sure that policymakers can really use the results of it.
Brilliant, thank you. Chris, do you have any comments on policy specifically?
Well, I mean, I think Julia has said a lot there. I mean, I'm constantly meeting with all four governments, and I can safely say, that the National Plan Monitoring Scheme is talked about in all four governments. Its importance is realised, and it is helping build that evidence base for why we need to manage habitats better. And just adding on to the data point that Julia touched on there, all of the NPMS data are openly available through the UKCEH Environmental Information Data Centre. That it's totally open. It's really great if you want to go and do any analyses yourself.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Okay. So Irene also has a couple of questions, which we love to see. So the first one, I think actually anyone could answer. I will first come to David, but then I will throw it out to the panel. So when you talk about habitat plant indicators, do you refer to habitat characteristic species? How many species do you need to designate a particular habitat?
Yes, we have both plant species that are positively associated with a habitat, but also negatively associated. So associated with the condition of a habitat, certain species will be giving a positive signal and some will be giving a negative signal. So we have both concepts within the NPMS. I don't have the numbers to hand, perhaps Rachel does, but I think it varies by different habitats. And there was a lot of design work in the early days of the scheme to use both quantitative data to define these indicators, but expert opinion to review whether they made sense from a range of botanists with huge field experience, so I think it was a well thought out approach, and it's proven very valuable in terms of then allowing us to analyze the data by producing indicators which combine the positive indicator species into an overall signal of change.
Thank you. Yes, Rachel, David called you out there, so thank you next.
Thinking about numbers, I think that it depends on your survey level, of course. So I think there's between sort of 10 and 15 species per habitat for the wildflower level, beginner recorders, and I think around 30 indicator species per habitat at the intermediate level. But it's worth saying as well as them being, I believe, chosen to be very accurate and useful indicators of habitat health. This is where that pilot phase in 2014 really came into play as well, because we also needed to make sure that the species that were chosen were narrowed down to those species that were fairly readily identifiable, not as many confusion species, were frequently occurring enough, the folk were going to be able to recognise them. So it really, and I think Chris sort of suggested, didn't she, in her talk, that it was a long old process really deciding on those indicator species. Yeah, they needed to be very, very, you know, clear and accurate indicators, but also, yeah, as I say, readily identifiable by a large number of people.
Very true. Chris and Julia, do either of you have any thoughts on this?
I think I said about this in my talk. It was one of the most complex parts of it. The criteria that we had for choosing them. Well, first we assigned all of the NVC communities to the NPMS habitat types. Then we tried to draw species from those NVC types, but we had all of these other criteria, as Rachel was saying, about how identifiable they were, how much they were right across the UK as opposed to just being regional, how easy it was. Incredibly complex to do.
I can really imagine. Julia, any thoughts, or shall I move to the next question?
I think everyone's covered that one very well.
Brilliant. Just a quick plug for the chat. There's been a couple of pointers to guides specifically for well, one on wall plants and then one on wall ferns. So if everyone wants to have a look, I know I will be later, but I just don't want anyone to miss those because they look fascinating. Okay, next question. Is there, so again, I'm going to throw this out to the room because I think this could be one for anyone. Is there any correspondence guide between British type habitats and European ones? Got a bit lost when I moved to Spain. Thank you very much for your work. Thank you so much, Irene. Yes, I will throw this one out to the room.
I think I can answer that. There's a correspondence or lookup between the NPMS and the UNIS classification that's used for European habitats. And we also have cross comparison with other habitat classification systems.
So is there anywhere that someone could specifically look that up? Is there like a website?
I think it's on the, it'll be definitely on the NPMS website under the resources, and maybe in the conservation and research sections of the website and the reports in terms of design phases.
Brilliant, thank you so much. We're coming to the end of the panel now, so I'm going to come back to the question that I saved for last. And I want to go person by person, so we will go David, because you were the last person who spoke, Julia, Rachel, and then Chris. What would you say are the top reasons for someone to get involved with NPMS for the first time now, 10 years in?
I think it's incredibly valuable. Hopefully you've heard a lot of examples through the day in terms of informing conservation action, policy, and research. I'd also say it's fun. As a very poor botanist myself, I enjoyed using the NPMS to help me learn some identification skills, because it has lots of amazing support materials, but also has different entry levels for different abilities to identify plants. So I think they're the two for me.
Thank you so much. Julia, any thoughts?
I completely agree with David. You know, it's contributing really, really valuable, useful data about changes in plant populations over time. So it's amazing to be able to contribute. But the learning is amazing. And for me, as a volunteer, it's learning the resources that are available to NPMS volunteers is amazing. The training resources and the information and support, and you can start at the wildflower level and then move up to indicator level, so you can grow your identification skills as you take part in it, which is wonderful. But also just getting to know your plot and the people around your plot, the landowners and local community around your plot and the plants in your plot, and seeing them over time is another wonderful way, wonderful thing about being part of the NPMS.
So true. Thank you, Julia. Rachel, any thoughts?
Well, I'd agree with what you chaps have already said. So I'm going to throw out something different as well, in that if you're starting now for the first time after 10 years, we've also, as a team and as a scheme, had 10 years of learning. So we've been really tweaking and evolving and learning how we communicate with our volunteers, you know, thinking about our training that Julia's just mentioned. We've now, you know, more able to facilitate buddying with folk. We've got squares that have already been surveyed previously that perhaps are now waiting to be taken back up again, so you're not necessarily starting from scratch if that's something that's daunting. So it's a really lovely time to be getting involved with the scheme, as well as it being hugely important and the data being incredibly important. It is just an absolutely fantastic community to be part of. And thankfully, as I think David mentioned, you don't need to be a super keen expert botanist. I hold my hand up, I'm very much in that category, but nobody is ever shy of giving somebody a hand or showing them their way around, and everybody seems so eager to share. So yes, it's a lovely community to be part of.
I have found plant nerds to be a very friendly bunch. Chris, any final thoughts?
Well, everybody's said everything, haven't they? I think I'd say it is a great time to get involved with the scheme, as Rachel just said. And I think for me, one of the loveliest things is getting a sense of place from it. I do a lot of plant recording anyway, but NPMS, you're going to go back to the same plots and you really get some ownership about them. You go, oh, last year it was beginning to scrub up a bit. I wonder if it's going to have changed this year. Oh, fantastic. They've brought some grazing in. That's just what I hoped. So you really develop some ownership and you care.
Brilliant, thank you. I hope everyone was writing the answers to those last questions down so that you can all go away to your friends and repeat verbatim what was just said and recruit hundreds more people to the scheme. Thank you so much to our panelists. That was fantastic. I'm sure everyone will agree with me that it was so interesting to hear all of your thoughts and all of your answers to those questions.